Welcome to Keep Middlesex Moving's webinar series. I am Lynn Cuevas, your host. For those of you not familiar with KMM, we are the Transportation Management Association for Middlesex County. We work with employers, local and state government agencies to promote programs aimed at traffic mitigation, sustainability, and economic development. To learn more about us, please visit kmm.org or shoot us an email at programs@kmm.org. This webinar will be recorded and can be sent to you along with the presentation at your request. I now turn it over to Bill Neary, our Executive Director.
Thank you, Lynn. Good morning. Today is once again another step in when we're looking at transportation movements and changes that's going to be happening in the world of our transportation networks tomorrow. Is a pilot program working with the New Jersey Department of Transportation and Eastern Transportation Coalition to discuss ways that we can look at the funding of our infrastructure beyond the gasoline taxes. And we're really pleased to have two really professional people to discuss what's happening. Our first guest is Zenobia Fields. Zenobia, I've known for almost 20 years now, Zenobia, and various departments. She also serves as the policy and program advisor at New Jersey DOT. She plans, organizes, coordinates department involvement in policy forums, the local, state, and national. This includes her coordinating reviews of the state and federal legislation, the capital investment strategies, her program line items, and her national transportation official policy statements to inform upcoming legislative changes, the transportation projects, and other transportation improvements. And beyond that, I've known Zenobia long enough to know her talent is amazing, but her personality is even just as good. So Zenobia knows how to work with people and do a great job in coordinating a lot of these policy efforts and make them reality. Our second guest is Dr. Patricia Hendron. Patricia is the Executive Director of the Eastern Transportation Coalition. This is a partnership with 17 states and Washington, D.C., and they're focused on connecting for solutions that keep people and goods moving throughout one of the world's busiest transportation corridors, basically the East Coast and especially New Jersey. Under Dr. Hendron's leadership, the coalition has embarked on and has enhanced initiatives related to incident management, traveler information, supply chain performance, truck parking, toll reciprocity, autonomous vehicles, and funding alternatives. Her focus is on the coalition developing innovative and implemental ideas for a diverse group of agencies. Now that's kind of the written part about your bios, but I think both of you, your professional skills and everything else is going to be taking transportation on a different kind of level when we're looking at transportation funding for the projects that we need to keep our infrastructure moving. So let's start at the beginning here. Just tell us what the Eastern Transportation Coalition does and how you were involved in making this work. I guess I'll pass it off to Trish or Zenobia to answer that kind of question. We also have the webinar that's going to be following along with some of these questions.
Great, thank you, Bill. I'll go ahead and jump in here and just explain a little bit about the Eastern Transportation Coalition. So I appreciate the introductory reading off of that bio. Is always a cringe moment, right, when you hear that read. So, but I think the coalition, I have to say, and running this organization is one of my most honorable jobs that I've had. And it's because of how we work. So we've been around for 27 years, and it really is about bringing diverse perspectives, stakeholders, just a range of agencies. So it's the DOTs, the MPOs, your transit agencies, toll authorities, public safety officials, so many people who touch our system, our roads and bridges every day and enable us as people moving and as trucks moving around our corridor. So how do we work together to make it safer, more efficient, and really improve the quality of life for New Jerseyans as well as your neighboring states? And I think what makes it so valuable is that we really focus on kind of boots on the ground, finding solutions that work. So we're kind of like the doers, I would say. So we really try to get into the nitty gritty and figure out what's going on. So the also beauty of an organization like ours is sometimes it's hard for one state, one agency to dive into challenging areas. And so what we try to do is kind of take our safety in numbers and say, okay, let's try to work on this really hard issue together. So we've been looking at things like truck parking to what we're talking about today, which is how do we fund our transportation system? So I used to joke that we're like a moth to the flame if it's hard, and it really takes sitting down and rolling up our sleeves. That's the type of work we love to do. So honored to be here today and excited to talk about how we may fund transportation in the future.
Well, I think that Zenobia knows that the TMA world, we are doing our best to try and reduce traffic congestion. But by doing that, we need to find out the entire transportation network and how it affects freight movement, affects access to medical care, access, all the things beyond single occupancy vehicles that people don't necessarily think about when they're thinking transportation. And I know Zenobia, with the policy programs at the DOT, have always been pretty innovative. New Jersey always was a leader in this. So when you talk about this, what are the kind of system you think our transportation system is facing?
Well, currently what we're looking at for the state, and I'm sure you know, Bill, and by the way, Trish got the chance to mention about the introduction. You made me cringe when you said 20 years. I don't know if you all are used to hearing that, but that time was like, oh my God, it really has been close to that long.
Well, I met you when you're 11. I think you're in 3rd grade at the time, or 4th grade, weren't you?
Good, Bill. I appreciate you saying that. All right. But when we're looking back at some of the issues that we're looking at with our New Jersey transportation system, you know that our transportation trust fund, currently our state funding is really looking at the fuel tax, and that's paid by our drivers and as they're driving using fuel. We use this to maintain and operate our transportation system. By now, we were just talking about with some of the conferences we're going to with the electrification of vehicles, vehicles are going to be traveling on less fuels or stopping using fuels at all. So we need to look at an alternative approach. So as we're seeing this decrease, we want to look at a more sustainable way to fund our transportation system. So we make sure that cars, as they're going farther or on less fuel, we have other options or other approaches to look at funding the transportation system.
Well, I think that is the question then. What are we doing? This gap is going to be created by less miles driven and electric cars. What are we going to do to try and fix this infrastructure that needs so much more? Where's the money coming from? I don't know if that question is for you. With the type of work you're talking about, this pilot program, I guess, addresses that issue somewhat. And that's where Trish is working on that with her coalition, her transportation, Eastern Transportation. Am I right, Trish?
You're right. So what Zenobia was touching on is there really is a national issue right now with our roads and bridges really dependent on that fuel tax. So every time someone goes to the gas station, which now is a painful experience, part of the fuel that you're consuming, a small portion of that goes to maintain the roads and bridges that we're driving on. So as it's great that our cars are going farther on less fuel and some on no fuel at all, but the challenge is we need that funding in order to pay for those roads and bridges. And it really, Bill, is about that link between use and payment. So the fuel tax is 100 years old, and that was around when all of our cars were basically the same. So now we have a lot of range out there, a lot of differences. So that link between use and payment has really gotten broken. So to your question, what are we doing about it? So we're really looking at seeing if we can reestablish that link between how much you use and how much of our roads and bridges and how much you pay. So it's concept called a mileage-based usage fee. It's also talked about or referred to as a road user charge, a vehicle miles traveled fee. So a couple of different names, which is a little bit confusing, but the basic concept is you're going from how you use and pay the roads in our transportation system from how much fuel you consume to how many miles you drive. And because this is a national issue, this is not just for New Jersey or your neighboring states, this is the entire country trying to really think, how do we pay for transportation in the future? And because it's a national issue, Congress created a federal grant program. So organizations like mine and others around the country, in partnership with leading states like New Jersey, we applied for these grants. And under this grant, we're trying to explore and ask New Jerseyans, what do you think about going from a fuel tax-based approach to a distance-based approach? And this would be a replacement. I think that's really important to emphasize. It's changing how we really interact and that link again between usage and payment. So why we really got into this is we're different on the eastern side of the country. I lived in California for a while and it was lovely, but that's a really big state. They don't have to worry as much about people traveling across state lines. And also on the East Coast, we're a really important freight corridor. We got a lot of trucks moving up and down. We have toll facilities. So I guess a long story short is we're complicated on the East Coast, and we're proud of that, right? But how would a distance-based fee work in this really complex environment? And so that's why, in partnership with New Jersey, we went and applied for these federal grants to really explore what could a distance-based fee look like, feel like in New Jersey. So that's what we're trying to do right now.
And we're not thinking about bridge replacements and bridge repairs going down in price. That's not part of what we're thinking is going to happen. So we have to face the realities of changes in prices of what we have to do to maintain. And because New Jersey is small and because New Jersey is congested, we don't say our roads are necessarily only congested, they're also heavily used. And I think that's one of the issues that we have to face as a state. And if we're going to be using the freight movement as such an economic driver, we know the trucks do a lot more damage to our infrastructure than the cars. But we have to base a system that's going to be used in a way that's totally different than what we've been doing for the past 100 years. So I think that's what this is all about. So when we're talking about how this is going to do, you have to obviously just can't say this is what we're going to do. You have to get some information first. So I'm assuming we're talking about this pilot program that's being reinstated. But can you tell us more about how this is going to work and what it's all about, what a pilot program means, so we can get this information?
Mm-hmm. So that's a part of what Trish was saying earlier, is that with this Eastern Transportation Coalition, it's a 17-state partnership, which New Jersey DOT is a part of. So we're going to be facilitating a mileage-based user fee pilot, and this is going to help us explore it in a real-world setting. So we're going to be looking at, and Trish was talking about, we have a national federal grant to look at this. And with the grant, we're going to be encouraging residents and you, Bill, so I'm hoping you're going to sign up this time too.
Well, Zenobia, I was part of the first pilot. As part of the first pilot, and I'm happy to do the second pilot. I think the more people who participate, the better information we have and the better decisions we can make.
There you go. We got that sound bite. Thank you, Bill. When we get extra people participating, what we're looking for, we really want to hear all the voices. So we want to hear what people like, what they don't like, what they think we can change. We are really in our test mode right now. So we're really looking to understand all the perspectives. So we want the public to participate in the pilot because we're going to be sharing the results with our policymakers to help them determine the next step for all of our communities.
But this pilot program also entails some kind of actual data collection too. Am I right? I mean, it's not just a questionnaire or a survey about where do you go and what do you do. It's actually a way to get a much more precise measurement of what people do. You can talk about the technology that's going to be involved in this.
So a part of that data collection it really starts with us enrolling folks. So we need individuals to enroll. So if you aren't aware of the pilot website, it is New Jersey MBUF, or as Trish says, so which stands for mileage-based user fee, New Jersey MBUFpilot.com. And it's really easy. In the world of we're talking about technologies and these icons, you just click on the enroll button. It takes you to the technology provider's website. In this case, it's Azuga. So Azuga, you're going to see, and I have this little dongle right here with Azuga where you can plug into the device. So you're going to have the website. What you're going to need to have with you, Bill, is you have your VIN number. You have your odometer reading, your latest odometer reading. If people don't know where their VIN number, it's on your insurance documents, or of course, it's usually right when you open the door. Sometimes it's under the dash, but this little OBD device, you plug in under the dash, and it's very simple. You just drive like you normally do, and the pilot is going to run, and that's part of the technology we're using to log miles or look at the information of the miles traveled. That's going to go until the end of October, and we're going to be collecting that data. But for you, the only thing you need to do is plug it in and drive as you normally do.
But what's interesting to me, Zenobia, since I was part of the first pilot program, you get reports too about what you're doing, what you're driving, where you're going. So you actually get a response back about what you're participating in the pilot, you're also learning about what you're doing yourself, measuring your own miles, which I thought was an interesting way of looking at it. It was like, yes, we're helping the DOT and the coalition get their information, but we're also learning about ourselves too and how much we drive. I mean, if nothing else, you say, I really put that many miles just going to 7-Eleven and then going home and then going to the bank and then going home and then going to the dry cleaners. It makes no sense to drive that kind of style. And so we're hoping to reduce the vehicle miles traveled directly and improve traffic congestion by measuring our own way of driving cars. I think that's a great thing.
Bill, I'm going to jump in on the information you get from participating. So again, we were talking a little bit earlier before we jumped on this call about technology. And so I have 2 young girls, and their interaction with technology is very different than mine. They already wear a little Fitbit around their wrists. And one thing I think about this potential technology that's happening in our world, the question is, what does that mean for transportation? What does that mean with our relationship to our vehicle? So when I participated in my first pilot, I was really surprised how little I drove. I actually thought I drove a lot more. So what's kind of interesting about participating in the pilot is you have information you get, and it is just from this private company called Azuga. So I want to be clear about that. We take privacy very seriously in this effort. So we are asking your opinion through some surveys, but the data that is collected as part of this pilot is yours. And is, with all due respect to my friend Zenobia, the New Jersey DOT and myself, we never see your data. We don't want to see your data. That is privacy invasion. So we will have a very clear protection of your privacy. That being said, I think it was kind of cool. I got an app on my phone and I could see where I was traveling. And again, I was surprised. I live in Maryland. I was surprised how many times I crossed over into the DC border. I'm in Richmond, Virginia today. So it just was, I'm a transportation geek. So of course I loved it, but it was interesting to see little maps of where I went and just information about how I was driving. That was my data. And also after the pilot is done, I kind of wish I could look at it again, but it all gets destroyed. So it is very interesting, I think, and I hope others would also be interested in where they drive and how much they're paying for fuel, how much they're paying for fuel tax. We're really trying to give people more information because we're driving around in a computer. I have really old vehicles, but there's still a computer in my car. So
yes, there is.
It's kind of interesting. Like I'm curious what that computer is gathering about me. So I was interested to learn more through the pilot.
Well, I'm always fascinated. I say the KMM offices are 7 miles from my house for a 35-minute ride. So that's when you start looking at the distances versus the time it takes. Really shows you the connections between miles driven and how much fuel you're using sitting in traffic. I mean, when you think about it, it's those kind of alternative ways of funding things are going to be interesting going into the future. So I guess the implementation is always a problem, and making sure we get enough people involved is always a bigger problem, which is why I'm happy to help you do this today. I'm hoping people will sign up. And when would you like that? You'd like to have this implemented right away, and it's going to go to October, you said, Zenobia?
Yeah, so we're not looking to make a decision on the implementation yet. So I want to be clear that this is a research effort. We're still at the research point of it. We just want people to get the experience of the pilot and decide whether they want to use GPS, non-GPS, some of that technology, looking at telematics. Like I used the first time I chose to get the dongle without the GPS because the same thing where you're talking about with the 7-Eleven, I didn't want to necessarily people looking at what store I was stopping at, or during the pandemic where I wasn't stopping. And then there's the stores we go to keep our spirits up. So you didn't want to. So right
that means
now,
you've been going to church, right, Zenobia? We want to make sure we're talking the same thing.
That's what it is, Bill. I always appreciate you. So right now, I have the option of using telematics, which all I need is my VIN number, and they get the information from the dash and an app on my phone. And it's very easy, and it's cool that I'm actually looking at, okay, this is what I'm spending for fuel, this is how it would work if we were using the mileage-based user fee. And for me, I gotta say, I'm looking at it, it's about the same. We're only talking about possibility of a couple of cents different, but it really is interesting to me. But of course, we're transportation groups. We care about that. But to get back to, I'm sorry, Bill, did I cut
No,
you
go
off?
ahead, no problem.
To get back to what we were saying about the implementation part of it is that we are at the research stage right now. We don't know if we're going to be recommending moving it forward with a mileage-based user fee. This is about exploration, but we're at a critical part where we're listening to the participants that are part of the pilot. So we definitely encourage you to join the pilot and provide feedback.
Excellent. Well, I was just going to point out that we're the Middlesex County Transportation Management Association. We're the nonprofit, and we do get additional support from TMAs. The TMA gets a support from the DOT and the planning authorities, but there's also 7 other organizations like ours throughout the state. New Jersey is the only state that's covered by a TMA in every corner. So there's a TMA in your county, wherever it happens to be. So if you need additional information or specific information about this type of program, there's a local representative you can talk to. So, I mean, I would encourage you to get either in touch with us or go to TMAC, TMAC website and contact the local TMA in your neighborhood, because I guarantee, because our webinar and our social media now crosses those county lines routinely. It doesn't stay just in Middlesex County. But I think that's where we can help spread the word. We will obviously work in coordination with our other TMAs and try and make sure this program is more successful and help with you guys and do these type of programs. But I think this is, when we're looking at the future, these are things we have to talk about.
And I have to say, we are all transportation geeks on this call. I think we're all wearing the little badge, but we do understand that we're asking people to do something. And so as part of this grant work, we do have incentives for people who are eligible. So not government employees, sorry. So what we're asking people to do is, we're asking people to do something. And we know that takes some time. So you can have incentives up to $100. So hopefully that might, if someone's interested, maybe that'll push them over the edge to say, sure, I'll do it. And you can get those incentives again by enrolling in the pilot and having the technology that you choose. And there are choices out there. You can have location-based, you can have non-location-based if you want. You can use, like, if you have a fancy car like Zenobia, you can do in-vehicle telematics. So I'm saying that Zenobia because I have like 20-year-old cars, so that was not an option for me. So we really want people to be curious about this, but to push the curiosity, we're saying sign up, and if you fill out a survey, you get $50 for that survey. At the end of the pilot, we ask for another survey, and you can get another $50 there. So it's really, again, we're talking a lot about this pilot because it's been so important in the work that we've been doing, and the coalition has been working on this for several years and done pilots around the eastern side of our country. And the reason why it's just so important for people to get enrolled is people's concept of what this is just very different. And we've been talking a little bit about privacy and how important that was. So that's just one example. When people interact with the technology, and Bill, I'd be curious to see if this happened to you, it just is different than what people thought. It was different than what I thought. I didn't even know where my OBD2 port was. I didn't even know I had one. So all of a sudden I have this device in my car and I'm learning, but I was concerned about privacy. So we have, again, really strict privacy protections in place. And we saw over time that people's concern about privacy drops. And you wonder why. And it really is that real world hands-on experience. It just makes a difference. Like, we can have an idea of what something is, but we're asking people to join us to do it. This does not mean, I want to be very clear, that you think it's a good idea. We actually don't know. As a result of this, New Jersey could decide not the right path for our state, not the right path for our citizens. But I think we owe it to ourselves to ask and try to figure this out. And if it's not good, then we need to figure out another path, because our current trajectory doesn't look too good. So we really encourage people to join us in this exploration.
Well, thank you. I think you summed it up really well. I will say, in terms of technology, my technological skills means I know how to make a phone call to get somebody to do something, okay? I've gotten pretty good at that advancement. And in terms of that device you're talking about, I knew how to go right to my car mechanic and tell me where that thing is supposed to be plugged into. It Took almost 4 seconds, but I had to wait 5 seconds to talk to him. So it was really easy. And I think the things you're pointing out, incentives are nice, but it's for the good cause. I mean, the long-term goal is to make sure we answer these questions directly. The privacy part is important. I mean, nobody wants to know when you're going to lift up your spirits, okay? So those type of programs, I think, are all good. And I really want to appreciate you and Zenobia for the work you're doing. You're visionaries in terms of understanding that transportation funding is never an easy thing. And it's not going to get any easier as our fuel tax depletes. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I'll give you guys, anybody else have anything else they want to add before we wrap it all up? And once again, thank you so much. Zenobia, thank you.
Bill, I would definitely say, so first of all, thank you for having us. We really appreciate getting the message out about this exploratory effort that we're doing. So I want you and Lynn and Roberta to make sure, and also Christina, to join our pilot. Encourage your neighbors, take it out, show them our website, but our website at New Jersey mileage-based user fee pilot.com. You can join, click enroll, and we hope to see what you get.
Thank you. Trish, appreciate it. It was a very nice program. We're looking forward to spreading the word. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Take
thank
care.
you.